The vast landscapes of Africa, a continent of unmatched natural beauty and ecological diversity. Yet, concealed within this splendor is a growing crisis, a climate ordeal that belies its relatively low contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. A continent rich in cultural tapestry, inhabited by hundreds of millions, now grapples with an existential crisis. The continent's water, agriculture and food systems, livelihoods, public health and infrastructure are collapsing, and Africa is sliding into extreme poverty and unimaginable climate calamities. Africa, where over 95% of agriculture relies on rainfall, stands exposed. Recent data shows that 7 of the top 10 countries most at risk from climate change in the world are within Africa. Mozambique first, Malawi third, Ghana and Madagascar. Over 23.4 million people grapple with food insecurity and malnutrition, casualties of relentless droughts that force desperate migrations and heightened tensions. About 5.1 million children are acutely malnourished, and an estimated 2.7 million people are displaced from drought. Renowned climate change advocate Nemo Bassi voices deep concern over the imminent impact, emphasizing the urgent need for addressing these issues.
When we want to see an example of climate injustice in the world, Africa is a perfect example, because Africa has contributed minute amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and yet she is taking all the beating and all the impacts. We have cases of droughts, we have floods, we have coastal erosion, sea level rise. Every single thing you would think about in terms of climate impacts, and even in terms of the impacts of green energy materials extraction. And so when we look at the continent, we're seeing from all the reports from scientists so far that the impacts we've seen so far are quite bad, but the ones coming will be worse.
Climate consequences reverberate across the continent, triggering floods in some countries and dehydrated lands in others, further fueling climate cataclysm. Yet, the continuous human activities such as indiscriminate mining and fossil fuel extraction continue to scar the landscape and the ecosystem. Many countries bear witness to the pressing challenges that threaten its water, agriculture, livelihoods, and very survival. In the very heart of the crisis are local communities. Their voices echo the tales of struggle and resilience, where the fight for survival battles the forces of climate change. In the heart of Kenya lies Taita Taveta County, once a thriving community known for its vast agricultural estates producing sisal, dairy, beef, and fruits, thanks to its lush vegetation. However, the landscape is now shadow of its former self. The once green land now bears the scars of drought induced by climate change, leaving locals bereft of their traditional livelihoods in horticulture, livestock production, and farming. Agriculture, which once contributed significantly to household incomes and employment, has been dealt a severe blow. Gideon Ndambuki, a local resident, shares his story.
This land, which you are seeing here, was used for farming for all of our life, but the things have changed. We used to plant cassava here. We used to plant sweet potatoes here. We used to use green grams here. For the last 3 years, we haven't gotten anything from this land. We are waiting for rain for all this time, and it has not rained. So this land now is no longer productive. This land is no longer usable for agriculture due to changes in climate. The last time it drizzled here was this year on January. And it was only for grass and for consumption of animal, but for human consumption, things have changed. People now have to change their lifestyle. So we are changing the lifestyle now to people are here moving from farming and are trying to a new venture of mining, trying to get something out of mining sector.
Sometimes we could farm and expect good harvest, but elephants will come and destroy everything. But the main challenge is drought as a result of rain failure, and that's why you will see the place is very dry.
The long-term environmental consequences are alarming: soil degradation, reduced water volumes in rivers, landslides, deforestation, and the drying of wells and rivers, all leading to the loss of livelihoods. As the harsh, arid conditions grip 89% of Taita Taveta County, only a small portion of the highlands remain a potential oasis. Geologically situated within the Mozambique belt, this region has endured 4 years without sufficient rain, leaving the land parched and unyielding. Christine Saru Kilalo, Deputy Governor of Taita Taveta County, explains how dire the situation is.
So many things have changed. Taita Taveta being a county where majority of its people, for their livelihoods, they depend on land and the use of the natural resources directly. But unfortunately, that is not doable anymore because of the climate change and the changed seasons. We have had 6 seasons without proper seasonal rain, and that tells you now people are hungry. And because people are hungry, you'll use the nearest natural resource.
As climate change continues to transform the once green landscape into dry and cooked lands, farmers are compelled to adapt by becoming emergency miners, and local residents have turned to mining gemstones and industrial minerals, further exacerbating the climate-related challenges. Yet, this adaptation comes with severe consequences, with wildlife disappearing, environmental degradation escalating, and the loss of age-long traditions.
Taita Taveta is one of those counties which is highly endowed with minerals, both gemstones and commercial minerals. And there is a lot of mining that has been going on because being a natural resources of high value, it attracts a lot of interest, not just locally, but also internationally. In terms of benefits, the locals, in the case of Taita Taveta, they have borne the brunt of the effects that come with mining, but then the locals have not benefited much.
Even when miners manage to uncover the valuable resources, the largely unregulated mining industry disproportionately benefits a select few, often outsiders to Taita Taveta. This imbalance exacerbates poverty, fosters environmental destruction, and fuels conflicts, leaving the majority of locals grappling with the harsh consequences of climate change and resource exploitation.
We normally sell whatever we have from here because we don't have access to the market outside. I may not tell exactly, but at least 5,000 Kenyan shillings or 2,000 Kenyan shillings in a month because we produce very little gemstones from here. Since I came here, the benefits I got for the period is that I can eat and drink, but I have not managed to get enough money for investment.
Kambele, a town in Cameroon, echoes the parallel plight of Taita Taveta. The unmistakable impact of climate change is palpable, exacerbated by the relentless pursuit of gold that leaves scars on the Earth's crust. Kambele stands as another poignant example of a community caught in the crossfire, where the delicate balance of nature clashes with the unyielding force of climate change. Kambele land is a ruin to satisfy the lustful luxuries of the West, while its people live in poverty and squalor. Langele has been mining for over 30 years, unaware of the dangers this trade brings, and so also are the local miners.
On est en train de travailler là. Quand on met l'engin, on fait monter le caillou. Après, on fait monter le caillou.
I crush rocks, then wash them. We are looking for gold. With the help of engines, we fetch rocks and then we break them. When we are done breaking, we crush them and then wash them. We use mercury to weigh them. With luck, one might make 200 or even 300,000. I do feel tired at times, so I take some tablets and take a rest. You can't do this work without feeling fatigue. But since I am already used to it, I am not worried.
Il y a des que tu peux faire les 2 grammes, les 3 grammes. Après, tu donnes les 50 000, les 10 000.
There are days when you could get 2 or 3 grams, and that could fetch you some 50,000 or 10,000. Only God knows how much you could make. So that is our work.
Moi, je vends aux collecteurs, je ne connais pas ce que les collecteurs font. Pas te faire avec. Non, oui, il y a les enfants.
Yes, I have children. I have 4 children, but I send my children to school, at least to try my best. I work to sustain myself and sustain my children, to educate my children.
As we peel back the layers, we reveal hidden narratives beneath the surface, illustrating that the cost isn't solely measured in minerals, but extends to the irreversible toll on the lives of its impoverished residents.
Yes, this is gold mining. We are mining from natural resources, known as a gold. To do this, we have to work all day. Then we wash and rinse it. Whatever we get is what we sell to be able to feed. I am 19 years old. The largest quantity I have ever gotten is 85 grams. But when I work, at times I get 2 grams or 1 gram. 8 points or 5 points. It depends. At times, if you work hard on a day, you could get 1.5 grams or even 2 grams. And then you know the market fluctuates. There are no fixed rates. It's the middleman that decides. And most at times, they buy a gram for 30,000. Yes. Of course, there are risks and accidents. Like this one. If it collapses, I could be buried underneath. And so far, I'm still poor.
Kambele grapples with relentless landslides, a consequence of unregulated gold mining that has placed the community in direct conflict with the forces of nature. The peril embedded in this trade serve as a poignant symbol of the systemic challenges faced by communities navigating the immediate hazards of resource exploitation and the overarching threats posed by a changing climate. Tragically, many lives have been lost in the search for gold in Kambele. Kambele is just one of over 400 mining sites dotting the eastern borders of Cameroon.
With respect to the adverse effect of mining activities in our locality, the first problem is that of the climate, because we are in the month of October. Since I was born, we've always known the month of October to be the rainy season. The sun hardly comes out. But now we are experiencing climate change. I'm wondering if this continues till December or even January. Are we going to live in the swamps? Aside that, we used to experience flu during the dry season. But since the Chinese arrived with their toxic chemicals, we no longer know when the flu starts or when it ends. People suffer from flu. Some have problems with their eyesight and rashes as a result of contamination of water by mercury. Aside that, with regards to economic activities, frankly, we are suffering. Everything has been taken away from us. The riverine people have nothing left. The people no longer have control over their God-given wealth.
Between 2013 and April 2021, a staggering 157 deaths were recorded at mining sites, with a quarter attributed to drowning and landslides in the open pits left by miners. The severity of the situation prompted Cameroonian authorities to take action, resulting in the closure of at least 30 gold mines, including some owned by Chinese entities. Beyond the natural elements, unregulated activities, deforestation, and carbon emissions accelerate the impact of climate change. Promises of adaptation and mitigation fall short, leaving communities like Kambele vulnerable. Once known as Nigeria's happy city, Ayetoro is a coastal town renowned for its communal vibrancy and scenic charm. The city used to live in peace and productivity until an oil facility was located by its shores.
We are into fishing, and the men go into the sea while the women buy the fish from them, take it all over the places like Warri, Saple, Lagos, and so on, to mention few. We grew up to know Ayetoro as one of the tourist centers in Old Western region, even in Ondo State till today.
The acronym, the happy city, that this is where all find happiness.
Rising sea levels and intensified storms have devastated this once thriving town, altering the lives of its inhabitants forever. The traditional king, His Royal Highness Oba Ojagbomi Oluwambe JP, and other residents call for urgent attention as to save the community from the impact of climate change.
In the later part of the 80s, when the oil exploration started, our people noticed that before it used to be a normal cycle of sea, for some time we take a few portions of the land away, another 6 months is going to add that same portion back or even add more. That was normal. But in the later part of the 80s, our people noticed that the rate at which it was taking the soil was higher than the rate at which it was adding mud to it, because our terrain here is muddy. And our people started to wonder what was happening. They kind of measured this thing and they realized that we were losing land. Before, Ayetoro used to be very, very, very far from the sea. People that come now will be wondering, why did you people come and establish so close to the sea? They did not establish so close to the sea. It was kilometers away from the sea. By early 90s, it was obvious that we were having serious problem.
Ayetoro community in the days past is an industrialized state or community, but as it is now, the reverse is the case because of the incessant or recurrency surge that is affecting our land and destroying our not just land but a habitable land where we have houses and factories. So most of these factories have been destroyed by the recurrency surge. And as we talk right now, Ayetoro community, God forbid, if care is not taken or prompt action is not taken, we don't pray for that anyway, that it might not go into extinction.
We have about 2 or 3 secondary schools in this community. But because of the incursion, which has destroyed the building, no more secondary school except one now. We women have to take our children to the urban area, Okitipupa, Akure, and so on for schooling, which made our women to work extra, and it stressed many one. Hypertension here and there because of the problem, sickness because of the problem of this sea incursion.
2009 to date, it has been terrible for the people. We are now living as refugees in our own community. Most of the elders you see here, they are living in the palace. The palace has also been expanded in one way. The palace too is not left of the devastation. The whole floor is standing under water as we are here. The sea will rise as high as 6 feet, and it will slam against the building, and it will drag every property and everything, even human, back into the sea. So what our people do is just to rescue the children and leave the properties. It is so strong and so powerful.
We have been crying on to the NGOs, the local government, the state government, the federal level, even to the world now, we are still crying. Arise and help us. Come and bail us out of this predicament. We cannot solve it on our own.
Our appeal is a save our soul appeal to the state, to the federal, to the agencies, to the international community. This we know. Global warming is responsible. We are not the only community affected, but we are the most affected in Ondo State because we are densely populated and we have rich heritage that must not be lost.
These communities are just a subset of numerous others across the African continent that are experiencing the impacts of climate change. There are many more affected communities scattered throughout Africa. So, where do we go from here? How do we stop the effects of climate change? International collaboration is vital, where the world unites to support Africa with technology, funding, and expertise to mitigate and adapt to the climate crisis. At the close of the first African Summit on Climate Change, African leaders made profound statements on what could change the needle. William Ruto, President of Kenya, calls for urgent action.
Hamjambo, Jambo, that Africa is not only the cradle of humanity, it is indeed the future. We are aware of the unjust configuration of multilateral institutional frameworks that perpetually place African nations on the back foot through costly financing, which plunge our economies into debt trap and deny them resources needed to mitigate and adapt in response to climate change, invest in energy transition, and facilitate industrialization to create jobs and wealth, and to reduce inequality. We demand a fair playing ground for our countries to access the investment needed to unlock the potential and translate it into opportunities. We further demand a just multilateral development finance architecture to liberate our economies from odious debt and onerous barriers to necessary financial resources.
African countries do not account for up to 4% of the emissions responsible for climate change, but we bear the brunt of it. And the IPCC assessment indicated that we are not on track to meet the global target of 1.5 degrees centigrade increase as contained in the Paris Agreement. The meaning is that developed countries who are mainly responsible for these emissions are still emitting and possibly not reducing their emissions enough. Africa is only asking for it to be equipped to provide additional support to the global target. And this is the major story, and this is the major language. This is the language of Africa, that promises and pledges must be translated into actions on the ground.
Taveta, Kambele, and Ayetoro narratives are not isolated African stories. They represent several African communities at the frontiers of climate change. They stand as a sobering reminder of the pressing need for global action to combat climate change and uplift affected communities. They reinforce the need for climate finance that will address the sufferings of affected local communities.
The world has to recognize that it's a climate debt. Africa has been exploited for centuries, and it's being exploited as we speak. We're having impacts due to things that we did not do. And so there's a climate debt that is being owed not just Africa, but the entire global south. So demanding for climate debt or climate reparation is number one. And we would like to note that the polluting countries are playing politics with loss and damage. Some have already said that they would not accept loss and damage as climate reparation. But that is what it has to be. It cannot be charity. Otherwise, the financial pot will remain empty, as it has been since the first mechanisms were set up.